In this lesson, we'll take one more look at an experiment that shows the benefits of retrieval practice for learning. And it's a word translation experiment, but you might be more familiar with using flashcards to learn words and their meanings, or in a world language, perhaps to learn a foreign word and its English translation. So that's what the translation here would be, a word and its translation into English. So here's the experiment. Students study words and their translations in one of four conditions. In all the conditions, the students study until they reach one correct translation for each item, and then they are put into one of four groups. So in other words, for each word in the list of words that you have to study, if you can retrieve the translation correctly one time, that's when you then are assigned to one of these groups. So some students are in the drop condition, where the word that they correctly retrieved is going to be dropped from further study and testing. So it's like taking the card out of the pile. You're not going to study the word and its translation anymore, and neither are you going to be tested on it. In the repeated study condition, the word is going to be repeatedly studied but not tested. Now, how do you do that? Well, the word is still in the pile of cards, so you're going to be looking at the word and its translation, but you're never going to test yourself. You're not going to be tested as to whether you can retrieve the translation by seeing the word. In the repeated retrieval condition, the word is repeatedly tested but not studied. So you're no longer kind of looking at the word and its translation. You're just repeatedly trying to retrieve the translation after just seeing the word, but you don't get to study anymore. And in the repeated study test condition, the word is repeatedly studied and tested. So the card is in the pile, and you get to look at the word and the translation and also test yourself on the word to see if you can retrieve the translation. Now, students study these words, and then they're going to be tested on a final recall test after 1 week delay. And here are the results. So the y-axis shows the proportion of final recall. So you know what proportion of words could the student correctly retrieve the translation. We see an obvious pattern here. The drop condition and the repeated study condition, much worse performance compared to the repeated retrieval and the study and retrieval condition. Now let's think about this a little bit here. Remember, the difference between the drop condition and the repeated study condition is that in the repeated study, the word is still in the pile, so you still get to look at the word and its translation, right? So you get to repeatedly look at the word and its translation in this condition compared to just once here. Notice there's not much of a benefit to that, repeatedly studying the word and its translation. Importantly, there is no opportunity in this condition to practice retrieval, right? So not much benefit to repeated study in this type of situation. Remember, all the words were accurately retrieved once, and then the students were assigned into these groups. And let's examine the condition here. Let's compare bars 3 and bar 1 here, the repeated retrieval condition. This is a condition where the students did not do any further study with the word. It was not in the pile. They didn't look at the word and its translation. No further study, but what they did do was repeated retrieval attempts. So they would see the word and then try to retrieve the translation. And notice the significant improvement in the performance for this group compared to the drop condition here, right? So in both the drop and the repeated retrieval, there's no further study. There's no further study of the word. The only difference here is multiple retrieval attempts, and you get huge gains in retention. In the study and retrieval condition, so the word and its translation are repeatedly studied and repeatedly given retrieval practice, we see similar results. So the key seems to be opportunities for retrieval are related to better retention for these words and their translations 1 week later.